the middle of, ironically, a Giants-Dodgers game, we lost Vin Scully. I would say that he was larger than John Madden. I would say, you know what? I'll eulogize in a minute, but I think his peers would do a better job at eulogizing quite possibly the greatest announcer to ever grace American television. Here's MLB Network on the loss of Vin Scully.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant opening day. It's goosebump time here at Dodger Stadium.
Vin Scully was the greatest broadcaster in baseball that there ever was. Maybe the greatest sports broadcaster there ever was.
2-2 to Harvey Keene. 1 strike away. Sandy into his windup.
I've been around a lot of professional athletes and a lot of broadcasters over the years. One guy who I was in awe of is Vin Scully.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
There was just something to the tone of Vin's voice that, you know, it was exciting.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Exciting and yet soothing.
Perhaps the most beautiful and dramatic moment in the history of sports. Let there be a prayer for every life. And wherever you are, maybe you, in silent tribute to Campanella, can also say a prayer for his well-being.
And he had ways of philosophizing about things that were extraordinary. It wasn't baseball, it was
did.
life.
He had the Buckner call. He also had the catch at
His
Candlestick.
voice, for one thing, is something that you never forget.
We've had all the pomp and circumstance. We've had all the fuss and feathers.
It's time for Dodger
baseball.
There are certain broadcasters that they come along, no matter what era they come along in. There's no one like Vin Scully.
Vincent Edward Scully was born November 29, 1927 in Bronx, New York. Growing up blocks from the Polo Grounds, Scully quickly became enamored with the game of baseball and the excitement it elicited from fans.
I was a big Giants fan. I grew
Ironic.
up in the Polo Grounds. My first love was with the roar of the crowd, and that's what really intrigued me. And when I was 8 years old, I wrote a composition for the Nuns saying that I wanted to be a sports announcer. And that was the beginning of the love affair from 7 or 8 years old.
I believe they were Larry King and he,
That
yeah.
love affair would manifest itself years later at Fordham University, where Scully's broadcasts of Ram athletic games left a lasting impression on Red Barber.
I'll tell you how far back he goes.
Legendary voice of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
And one day, Red, in the course of a broadcast, said, this young man from Fordham had been writing to me and sending me tapes of his broadcasts of Fordham sports, and so I put him on a football broadcast this winter that I was anchoring. I thought it was terrific. So I'm going to give him a little shot here with the Dodgers.
It was an opening, and Red decided, I'm going to take that redheaded kid, and I'm going to make him an announcer.
And Scully was a very apt pupil and a very rapid one.
Vin learned at Red's feet, and then he said he's going to do an inning every game, and then for that summer, he did 1 inning every game.
Here's Vin Scully. Vin, thank you, Jerry, and good evening, everybody. And despite the fact that I have just knocked a cup of coffee in my lap and a suit that's just out of the cleaners, it's great to be home.
And we knew he was great right away, because we would talk on the corner. The guys would get together. Did you hear this kid? Wow, he's good.
Scully's broadcasts resonated beyond the street corners in Brooklyn. And when Red Barber left the team following the 1953 season, Scully became the Dodgers' primary announcer.
1 out in the first inning, in case you might have just dropped by. No scores.
In 1955, he was behind the mic for Game 7 of the World Series between his Brooklyn Dodgers and the crosstown rival New York Yankees. A moment that would prove to be one of the most emotional of his career.
The Dodgers had never won a World Series. And finally, on the last out, I said, rather simply, ladies and gentlemen, the Brooklyn Dodgers are the champions of the world. Well, a lot of people all winter long said to me, how in the world could you have been so calm? Well, the truth is, I could not have said another word without breaking down and crying.
Just 3 years removed from Brooklyn's first title, Dodgers owner Walter O'Malley relocated the team to Los Angeles.
Yep.
And with it came the budding voice of the franchise.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Vin Scully speaking to you from the Los Angeles Coliseum as opening day has finally come.
Vin goes to the West Coast, and he, within a year, instantly, straight away, becomes the Dodgers evangelist, its ambassador to the public.
Look at everyone holding
People
those
are
radios.
stuck on the freeway for hour after hour after hour. What better way to spend it than to pull up a chair, even in your car, as Vin says, and listen to him?
And let the personnel and the years change, they are still the Giants and the Dodgers. No two ways about it.
People thought, wow, this guy is so good. And they started bringing the transistor radios to the ballpark. Even though they were seeing the game, that wasn't good enough. They needed to know Vinny's take on it.
But in 1958, I made a trip with a bunch of disc jockeys out from Miami, and we went to the Coliseum. And everybody brought radios to listen to Scully do the games, and there was feedback. He actually had to say, turn your radios down. There's too much feedback off the broadcast. I'd never seen that.
Over the course of his storied career, Scully provided a soundtrack to some of the greatest moments in baseball history.
Yep.
On September 9th, 1965,
Sandy Koufax.
Sandy Koufax's perfect game.
It is 9:46 p.m. 2-2 to Harvey Keene. One strike away. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed. A perfect game. On the scoreboard in right field, it is 9:46 p.m. in the city of the Angels, Los Angeles, California.
Most people in Southern California said to me, and it was written up, how dramatic, how theatrical it was that I had the time. Well, it was pure luck. I was just giving it for Sandy and for his grandchildren, and it just seemed to play very well.
Vin was again behind the mic a decade later as a different type of drama unfolded at Dodger Stadium, as Cubs center fielder Rick Monday rescued an American flag from would-be arsonists.
And Rick Monday runs and takes it away from him. I think a guy was going to set fire to the American flag. Can you imagine that?
From Koufax and Monday's perfect plays to Buckner's blunder.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
To the most perfectly pitched game in World Series history.
Yep.
Got it. The greatest game ever pitched in baseball history by Don Wagner. A no-hitter, a perfect game in a World Series.
Vin Scully has given voice to some of baseball's most dramatic moments, but arguably his most iconic call of all time came in Game 1 of the 1988 Fall Classic.
Kirk
I
Gibson.
can still hear Vinny's voice when Kirk Gibson is limping out of the dugout.
And look who's coming up. And with 2 out, you talk about a roll of the dice. This is it.
They set the moment. The setup and the follow-up is also tremendous.
High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so
Oh, there's Tommy.
improbable, the impossible has happened.
It's not really real until Vin calls it, and people ran to hear that call. It was the perfect line.
If Scully's call of Kirk Gibson's World Series walk-off was his most iconic, perhaps his most poignant came with Hank Aaron's record-breaking 715th career
Against the
home run.
Dodgers.
The highlight we always hear is Milo Hamilton. You know, there's a new home run champion of all time. You know, it's brilliant. What you don't hear is Vinny's description on the Dodger radio.
The high drive into deep left center field. Buckner goes back to the fence. It is gone.
And then Vinny never said a word for 3 or 4 minutes after that. The fireworks went off, the roar of the crowd. He just let it play. When he came back on the air, he described the scene with 50,000 people on their feet.
What a marvelous moment for baseball. What a marvelous moment for Atlanta and the state of Georgia. What a marvelous moment for the country and the world. A black man is getting a standing ovation in the Deep South.
I'm watching this in a hotel room 25 years after the fact. And not only gave me goosebumps, but brought a tear to my eye, because he was able to take it beyond just the baseball significance into the significance for our whole society. And I thought that was a better bit of baseball broadcasting than anybody had ever put together before.
Vin Scully spent over 6 decades broadcasting Dodgers baseball. In 1982, he was inducted into the broadcasters wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame. In 2009, he was named the top sportscaster of all time by the American Sportscasters Association. Vin Scully will forever be remembered as one of the greatest broadcasters and Dodgers of all time.
He is every bit as important to the game of baseball as anybody who's ever played it.
He's the best there ever was and the best there ever will be.
For all those glorious years, just thank you. Thank you so very, very much.
And if you never knew who Vin Scully was, you just learned who he was right there. Much more than that. Born in 1927, obviously. He lived through... Well, he was alive during Pearl Harbor. He was alive during the Second World War. He was alive during the Korean War. He was alive for so many amazing, amazing moments in baseball history. You think about the lineage of Vin Scully, and it goes from, calling the games and the likes of Jackie Robinson to Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle, and the very end of Ted Williams' career to Ricky Henderson, Reggie Jackson, to Clayton Kershaw, Willie Mays, Nolan Ryan, Cal Ripken Jr., Tony Gwynn, Ichiro Suzuki, and even Mike Trout. And even to the great managers like Joe Torre and Connie Mack, to Bobby Cox, Tony La Russa, and Sparky Anderson, Tommy Lasorda, the great manager of the Dodgers. He has seen it all. He has called games, he has called matches, he has called the catch at Candlestick Park.
Looking, throwing in the end zone.
67 years with one team. 67, imagine 67 of your years calling a sport, announcing a sport, announcing anything, doing anything for 67 years. And Vin Scully, for the majority of his time calling Dodgers baseball, towards the latter half of his career, didn't have a secondary partner in the booth. It was just him.
And a high fly ball to left field. It is away out and gone. The Dodgers win it 11-10.
So Vin Scully would find a way to entice you to listen to this game, to understand this game, but he would do it in a way where in between pitches he'd tell a story.
Hired hand showed up with a wolf on a leash. Here's the 2-0 pitch, 2-1. Anyway, Johnny loved dogs. He had never owned one, though he had no idea about how serious a wolf might be. So he walked up to the wolf, and the man hollered at him, "No, it's a real wolf. Don't pet it." The 2-1 pitch in.
Vin Scully would tell the story of the game that's happening in front of you, or maybe on the radio, and then he would then tell you a story of that player on the mound, in the dugout, at bat, in the on-deck circle. He would always have something that would be interesting or poignant or historical, of some significance. Vin Scully would do that.
Anytime I hear Pearl Harbor, I was 14 when we had Pearl Harbor, and there is our distinguished hero indeed. When I think about Pearl Harbor, I almost automatically think that's the only time I ever heard my father swear.
And yes, the radios are true. The video where you saw everyone holding up radios, even in the 21st century, when I was going to baseball games, I'm still going to baseball games, but when Vin was calling Dodgers games, there were people that would bring their handheld radios and they would sit them right down in the middle of the section, and we'd all hear Vin Scully call the game while the game was happening in front of us in person at the stadium. That's how important Vin Scully was.
Look who's throwing out the first ball at the World Series.
For every Sandy Koufax, for every Tommy Lasorda, for every Clayton Kershaw and Don Newcomb, Mookie Betts and Trey Turner, for every Freddie Freeman and Jackie Robinson, there's only been one Vin Scully. Thank you for not only making Dodgers baseball so important, but making baseball and making sports so important. Not only to us here in California, not only to us here in Los Angeles, but to the millions upon millions who loved the game all around the world. Goodbye, Vin Scully, wherever you may be.